The Young and the Restless spoilers. Lily's arrival was never meant to be a moment of discovery, yet fate arranged it with cruel precision, guiding her steps into a space where truth revealed itself without mercy or preparation. What she witnessed unfolded in a fraction of a second, but the damage carved itself into her permanently, Kane and Phyllis standing too close, the boundaries between them already erased. And then the kiss brief, undeniable and devastating in its intimacy. It was not dramatic or theatrical, which somehow made it worse, because it felt real and guarded and planned and therefore honest. Lily did not cry out or retreat immediately. Instead, she froze, her body registering shock before her heart could catch up, as if her mind refused to accept what her eyes had already absorbed. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing against her chest, making it difficult to breathe as betrayal announced itself without apology. The tension that followed was suffocating, the kind that fills a room and leaves no space for denial. Lily stepped forward, her presence impossible to ignore, her expression a devastating blend of disbelief, grief, and simmering rage. Her eyes moved between Kane and Phyllis, not searching for answers, but weighing the truth of what she had seen against the years of trust she had invested. In that moment, the past rose up against hearth promises, the reconciliations, the belief that hard-earned love, once repaired, could be made unbreakable. Kane reacted instantly, urgency overtaking reason, scrambling to reframe the moment before it solidified into something irreversible. He insisted the kiss was sudden, unwanted, a lapse initiated by Phyllis and meaningless in every way that mattered. A misunderstanding that should never be allowed to redefine everything they had built. But the speed of his explanation, the desperation behind it, only sharpened Lily's awareness that he was reacting not from innocence, but from fear of consequence. Phyllis, meanwhile, stood suspended between defiance and retreat, her silence heavier than any apology could have been. Whether she attempted a half-formed justification or chose restraint, the effect was the same. Her inability to take responsibility, to acknowledge the harm directly, became fuel for Lily's fury. Lily understood silence all too well. She had lived long enough to know that silence was often the refuge of those who knew they had crossed a line they could not undo. The imbalance between Kane's frantic explanations and Phyllis's guarded composure deepened Lily's sense of humiliation, making her feel not only betrayed, but exposed. As though she were the only one in the room who had taken the relationship seriously enough to be shattered by it. As the initial shock faded, something colder took its place. Lily realized that the true wound was not the kiss itself, but the ease with which it had occurred, the fragile threshold it revealed in Kane's loyalty. Trust, once fractured, does not break cleanly. It splinters, leaving jagged edges that catch on every memory and excuse. Kane's insistence that the kiss meant nothing only confirmed Lily's worst fear that her faith in him had been treated as something resilient enough to survive neglect, temptation, and carelessness. She could not accept an explanation that minimized her pain, because doing so would mean accepting a future where her boundaries could be crossed and later dismissed as accidents. The moment crystallized into clarity. Lily understood, with a painful calm, that this was not a situation that could be argued away or softened with time. The relationship she thought she was fighting for no longer existed in the form she needed it to. The realization did not come with relief, only deep, aching sorrow that settled into her bones. Ending things was not an act of impulsive anger, but a necessary act of self-preservation. She knew that staying would mean living with constant doubt, replaying images she could never unsee, questioning every absence and every silence. Love, she realized, should not require that kind of emotional vigilance. Her decision to step away from Kane was final, shaped not by spite but by exhaustion. She had reached the limit of what she could forgive without losing herself. The pain of separation was immense, but it was clean compared to the slow erosion of dignity she would face by pretending this betrayal could be absorbed without consequence. Kane's reaction, marked by panic and desperation, only reinforced her resolve. His attempts to hold on, to undo the moment with words and regret, came too late. The trust he was trying to salvage was already gone, and Lily knew that no amount of remorse could resurrect it. In sharing her intention to leave Genoa City for a while, Lily was not running away, but reclaiming space. The city had become saturated with memories so beautiful, others now poisoned, and she needed distance to hear her own thoughts again. Leaving was her way of refusing to let this moment define her entirely, a declaration that she would not remain trapped in the aftermath of someone else's mistake. She needed time to grieve not just the relationship, but the future she had imagined within it, and to rediscover who she was outside the orbit of betrayal. Kane watched her prepare to go with the helplessness of someone realizing too late that damage cannot always be undone by intention. His regret was genuine, but regret does not reverse actions. It only follows them, demanding to be lived with. As Lily turned away, her posture was rigid, holding together the fragments of her composure through sheer will. Each step she took away from him carried the weight of finality, not just an ending, but a transformation. She was no longer the woman who believed reassurance could substitute for accountability. When Lily walked out of that space, she carried her pain with her, but she also carried something else, a clarity. The image of her departure lingered, not as a dramatic exit, but as a quiet assertion of self-worth. Kane was left behind, confronted by the irreversible truth that some mistakes do not explode loudly. They unfold softly in moments of carelessness that permanently alter the course of lives. And as Lily moved forward into uncertainty, one thing was clear: she was choosing herself, even if it meant walking alone through heartbreak to find solid ground again. Lily did not merely stumble upon the truth. She encountered it with the brutal clarity that leaves no room for reinterpretation or denial. Whether by witnessing the intimacy herself or piecing together the unmistakable signs that Kane and Phyllis had crossed a boundary that should never have been breached, the result was the same: the collapse of everything Lily believed was still holding her family together. The knowledge settled into her slowly at first, like a tightening weight in her chest, before spreading outward into a full, paralyzing heartbreak. This was not a misunderstanding that could be softened by context or timing. It was a rupture that exposed how fragile the foundation beneath her life had become. Trust, once cracked, now shattered completely, leaving Lily standing amid the wreckage with no illusion left to cling to. The confrontation that followed between Lily and Kane was inevitable and explosive, not because of raised voices or dramatic gestures, but because every unspoken truth finally demanded acknowledgement. Years of compromise, forgiveness, and emotional labor surged to the surface, revealing a relationship far more complicated and damaged than Lily had allowed herself to fully confront. Kane's actions were no longer isolated mistakes. They formed a pattern of instability that Lily could no longer justify or explain away. In that moment, she saw with painful clarity that the drama consuming their relationship was no longer confined to the adults involved. It had begun to seep into the lives of Charlie and Maddie quietly but destructively. Lily's greatest reckoning came not from betrayal itself, but from its impact on her children. She began to notice changes she could no longer ignore: tension they carried, the uncertainty in their routines, the emotional vigilance that children develop when they sense that their home is no longer safe or predictable. Genoa City, once a place where Lily believed she could build stability, had become a landscape of conflict, whispered arguments, and emotional fallout. The chaos surrounding Kane and Phyllis had created an environment where Charlie and Maddie were absorbing stress they never should have had to carry. Lily realized that no matter how much she loved their father, love alone could not counteract the damage being done. She sought guidance from those she trusted, hoping for reassurance that there was still a way to protect her children without dismantling their lives entirely. But every conversation, every moment of reflection, led her back to the same unbearable conclusion: she could not guarantee safety or stability for Charlie and Maddie if she remained in Genoa City under the current circumstances. The very place that held their memories, their routines, and their sense of belonging had become intertwined with emotional volatility. Lily understood that staying would mean asking her children to adapt to an adult mess they did not create, and that was a burden she refused to place on them. The decision to leave was not impulsive. It emerged slowly, painfully, shaped by sleepless nights and quiet observations of her children's vulnerability. Choosing to walk away from Genoa City meant uprooting their lives, severing ties, and accepting loneliness and uncertainty in exchange for peace. It was the kind of choice that mothers make when they understand that short-term pain may be the only path toward long-term healing. Lily knew that this decision would be misunderstood by some and resented by others, but clarity had replaced hesitation. Her priority was no longer preserving appearances or salvaging what was broken beyond repair. It was safeguarding Charlie and Maddie's future. When Lily informed Kane of her plan, the gravity of her resolve was unmistakable. She did not frame the decision as punishment or revenge, but as necessity. The focus was not on what Kane had lost emotionally, but on what the children needed to survive this upheaval with their sense of self intact. Kane's reaction was one of shock, as though the consequences of his actions had finally crystallized into something irreversible. For the first time, he was forced to confront the full scope of what his recklessness had destroyed, not just a romantic relationship, but the structure of his family. Regret came swiftly, but regret could not undo the damage. Kane saw too late that the chaos he dismissed as manageable had become unbearable for the people he loved most. The realization that Lily was willing to leave everything behind rather than continue living within that instability struck him with devastating force. He attempted to hold on, to promise change, to insist that things could be repaired if given time. But Lily had already measured the cost of waiting, and it was too high. Every additional moment of uncertainty was another risk to her children's emotional well-being. Lily's strength lay not in her lack of pain, but in her willingness to endure it for the sake of her children. She remained resolute, even as Kane's desperation underscored how permanent the loss was becoming. This was not a decision she made lightly, nor one she made without grief. Yet she understood that true protection sometimes requires distance, and that love for one's children must outweigh the fear of starting over. The departure itself was quiet, devoid of spectacle, yet heavy with significance. Lily left Genoa City with Charlie and Maddie, carrying with her not just their belongings, but the weight of an entire chapter closing behind them. The city that had once represented ambition, family, and second chances now stood as a reminder of what happens when trusty roads and accountability comes too late. As they moved forward into uncertainty, Lily held onto one certainty above all else. She had chosen peace over chaos, stability over familiarity, and her children over everything else. Kane was left behind to face the aftermath alone. The absence of Lily, Charlie, and Maddie transformed regret into something sharper and more enduring. Genoa City no longer echoed with the presence of the family he had taken for granted. What remained was the unrelenting truth that some mistakes alter lives so profoundly that they cannot be repaired, only lived with. And in that silence, Kane was forced to confront the reality that love, once fractured beyond trust, leaves behind consequences that no apology can erase.